start by okay, even though you say here like steps 6 steps guide to perfecting your CV. What happens is that most of the applications that I get, and now this I'm telling you from experience, most of them aren't necessarily seen based on, I would say, 4 or 5 major things. So most of people don't read the job description or the job title. And okay, even though most of the time the job title doesn't necessarily reflect the job description, guys, please do read it, because that would actually have to be kind of reflected at least in your CV, even though it's a graduate CV. Even though it would be, I don't know, in 5 years time, you really need to have a story to tell, and your CV must tell the story that you're about the job that you're actually applying, right? And this is why I actually put there, okay, to have and to choose the story you want to tell. Now select the best structure. I know that there's been a debate in the last years regarding, okay, should I go for Europass or should I go for other websites? I'm going to share later on with you some websites that I found, and they're quite nice and they're quite creative, so you can actually go and play around and see if it fits you or not. For me, to be honest, it doesn't make a difference, but I know that in the industry there are a lot of managers that are still little dinosaurs that still on, you don't have Europass, why don't you have Europass, I cannot read this. Or I don't know, maybe they said, I want to see a more creative, out of the box CV, and at the end of the day you cannot know. So the more structured it is, to be honest, it's the better. Now I mentioned there, tag the employee's language. What happens is that most of the CV should actually reflect the job that you're applying. So for example, if you're applying for a job in marketing, even though I mean you as a professional in pharmacy, but we all know that in pharmacy right now there are a lot of departments that you can be a bit more creative. So we have this marketing, for example, department. So if you're applying for that, don't come to me with a Europass CV. I really want to see the creativity there. I want to see that you've actually put some effort into it, and it isn't, again, too flower power or too hippie, but it reflects a bit of your personality, because at the end of the day it should tell a story. It should tell your story and how you really are. Now, kiddos, put yourself at the center and in the context. So when I'm saying that, it's mostly because it should actually reflect, for example, if you have, in my case, right, I graduated pharmacy and I actually applied for my first job as a recruiter. Well, what would that mean? Okay, why would this person actually would go from pharmacy to HR, from one person to the other? So it's mostly going around the fact of making that story about you. So for me, it was, okay, guys, I graduated pharmacy, but I started in the local association and as an HR coordinator. So there is something that I've been like working on and working towards, and that would be a step forward for me. So that would make quite a lot of sense. And to be honest, even though now I will be in, let's say, I think my 4th job, I still have to tell the story, and I'm super proud of telling it because it's part of who I am, part of who I grew, and it's perfectly fine with me. Yeah, and I would say, 5 is mostly about, okay, creating talking points for the interview. Now, it's mostly about raising a question, your CV raising some questions, exactly what I mentioned right now. So, how is this person actually graduated pharmacy and went into HR? Or, how is this person, I don't know, love cooking or whatever, something that makes you differentiate from all the people that are out there. Most of the industries that we are part in, we have you as a recruiter, right? We have 300 or more applicants, or as I mentioned, depends quite a lot on the country, but imagine going through 300 applications all the same. Besides the fact that you already know which ones are completely no and a maybe and a completely yes, you still want to see, okay, look, this is something cute, this is something nice, and might give actually the recruiter an icebreaker when you would have that interview, right? That face-to-face connection. Then let's see, make any gaps in your CV part of your story. Now, what I want to mention with that is mostly the fact that, for example, most of us, okay, we might have some leap periods or leap years, leap months, whatever you want to call them, in between jobs, and trust me, it's perfectly fine, especially nowadays market. Now, as the market is actually growing towards people that would, or their experience would be quite project based, the fact of you having, I don't know, 1 year and a half, maybe two, of experience in a company, then you don't work for 1 month or two, and then you start a new job, that doesn't mean that, okay, what did it happen there? No, it's actually part of your story. So you can actually come and, I mean, okay, part of the truth might be that we actually went to, I don't know, Belize and enjoyed the sun. Or you can actually say that, I don't know, I just dedicated some time to, I don't know, go into some courses that I've always wanted to, and I felt that it was the time that I needed before wentting into a new role. Or actually starting a new role, because at the end of the day, for example, if you just graduated and you haven't find, let's say, a job right after, or maybe during, right? You said, okay, what happened in between you graduating and starting, I don't know, your job in July or in January? Let's be optimistic, right? And you say, okay, let me see what I can actually invent. So it isn't a matter of invention, it's a matter of staying true to yourself, staying true to your path, to be honest, and to your own professional experiences, even personal ones, I would say. Now, in this entire process, and here I'm giving you guys the backstory, so to say, right? The first stage is always going to be the sorcerer. Now, in most companies, the sorcerer and the recruiter are kind of the same. In big companies, they are different. What does this person do? It's that person that actually selects from those 300 applicants the people that the recruiter is going to see or the line manager is going to see. Now, why I mentioned the 6-second rule? Because it's actually 6 seconds that a person or a sorcerer and the recruiter actually spends on your CV. So make those seconds count. And even though I thought that it was a myth myself when I just read it, I realized it is the same. I'm just scanning for the important stuff in the CV. And for example, that is the reason why my CV has words bolded on it, because as you can imagine, people just, their attention goes into there and is the thing that they are going to remember or see first. And yeah, this is why, for example, I mentioned that it's about, for example, the roles that you had, the titles, the companies that you had, in this case, for example, the associations that you've been into, or the, I don't know, companies, pharmacies, you name it. Education, it matters and it doesn't. So I would say that it would be an endless debate that we would have over it. Yeah, dates and experiences so far. So as mentioned previously, it's always about how does it match your CV with what you've applied for. Because at the end of the day, if that role says, I don't know, let me just invent something now, like financial controller, and you've applied for it, well, it have to make sense, right? And yeah, I put the 2 seconds because this is how I've always done it. And I realized that is something that most people do. They look for the extraordinary stuff. And this is why, for me, I call them extraordinary seconds. Is the moment when that person is looking for that extra something. Like I mentioned about the, I don't know, cooking experience and so on. And again, it's an endless debate about, okay, should I put or not my hobbies in my CV? Well, I think you should, but try to again make it as compliant to your job description and to your job application. Because, for example, as I mentioned, if you're applying for marketing, I would want to know more about you and more about who you are. But if you're applying for a finance role, well, this isn't the case. But if you're applying for a finance role, well, I don't want to know if you're jogging in your weekends. I just want to know if you're good with numbers and you can do the job. So for example, I don't know, if you have a hobby that actually matches the job that you're applying for, it's amazing. So most of, for example, in pharmacy and, for example, I don't know, regulatory affairs or anything, right? Guys, most of them require, for example, attention to detail, right? So if you think about it, just put something that would actually imply that at the end of the day. Okay, docs, let me see. And I see a question here. Let's see. I've heard about computer software used to filter CVs. Yeah, that is a myth at the moment. What happens is that some companies, and again, big companies, are using them. It's the future. And this is why, speaking of the skills that, or maybe said, okay, the skills that will be for the future and the jobs that will not be in the next, I don't know, 10 years, this role of the sorcerer is going to disappear, and the recruiter's life is going to be much more easier. Because, okay, even though it's still a myth because we're seeing it only in the movies, that part of actually having a software that is going to select the relevant CVs for you, and then you have a recruiter that actually goes through them, is going to help a lot. Now, when it comes down to that, there's a trick and there's a human factor. Because at the end of the day, you always need the person that actually evaluates that CV. And the reason is that a computer doesn't actually see the personality or the person behind it. And just giving you an example, if the software actually tells you, okay, I need to find, I don't know, ACCA, or I don't know, a certain qualification, right, that you need to have it in your CV, and you've completely forgot about it, that CV is going to be discarded, even though you might have something equivalent, or you might have something that is, I don't know, even better, or you just forgot to actually mention it, and your experience and everything would be just fine. I mean, you would actually get into the next stage, but that software would just discard your CV. So I don't believe that is going to be necessarily the future, but I do believe in AI, and that is going to be definitely the future. Now, what are these weird photos? What I can tell you, and this I'm going to give you some of the ideas. I would say that this is how the human brain and how the human mind actually works. So when you see the red dots, those are the parts that most people are focusing their attention to. So if you can see, for example, in the left side, you can actually spot the most relevant things. So roughly around the experience, education here, and going to LinkedIn on the right side, they see the photo, of course, because you want to see eye to eye. Then you, of course, you see the summary, the experience, the brief, and then, for example, some skills that you would have in there. So I would say that even though, okay, yeah, this might not sound that true or sci-fi, trust me, guys, is the truth. And this is what happens also with, for example, Google searches. So it's something that is out there, and we just need to be a bit more aware or how to actually structure our CV in order for people to not actually lose their attention into reading it. So you can see all the other blue spots on the CVs that are things that you just like, okay, read between the lines, not even. So those parts are actually going to be completely discarded. So for example, if you can see in the left side of the first photo, there's that bottom thing where it's quite a lot of text. Trust me, I am also going to discard it, even though it's super nice and for sure things are super nicely written in there. Well, to be honest, I'm going to skip it. I don't have the time or the patience to actually go through them. I just want to get to know the person, see if it is relevant, and of course, for example, in my role, to see if the manager, or if I actually can convince, right, the manager to go through the CV itself. So, for example, imagine me, I just have to go through all of this, make a brief summary, make a summary over how that person is, and of course convince the line manager that is the best choice and it's worth at least an interview. And yes, you should include a photo in your CV. Please don't put photos of your wedding, I don't know, Snapchat or whatever. I want to see the person. And I'm just giving you this example because it happened more than once that I had people coming to the interview and I swear to God, I thought they were male or female, and it
Okay, guys, have a little bit of patience, please, because we're trying to deal with all the technicalities and all the people actually trying to enter. And I think it will be better right now. Just have a little bit of patience.
Hi guys, back on. Chip, I think we should wait a bit more for people to reconnect, or...
I think not, because 97 of them are here and we cannot actually, the capacity is not for more of them. So yeah, I think all of them are here.
Okay. Okay, thanks. So yeah, I don't know where this actually cut, so sorry guys for that. I officially reconnected with my phone because yeah, thank God that mobile data still exists. Yeah, exactly. Thanks. Thanks, Christian. So yeah, don't put your your wedding photo in your CV, please. And yeah, I actually mentioned it just because, for example, it happened more than once that I had people coming to the interview that I swear to God I thought that were male and they were females and the other way around. So I just want to see the person, okay? So, for example, I don't know if you're applying to a job abroad and they know that, I don't know, all the names of girls, for example, end in A, and I don't know, you have a guy's name that ends actually in A, well, that would be a bit tricky, right? Okay, let's see. Yeah, about the program, I'm going to talk a bit later, Tara. Thank you. Now, speaking of the program, it was exactly here. So this is one magic wand. It's called Enhanced CV. I truly recommend it. Now, word of advice, it only lets you in the free part to craft your CV for only one page. Now, ideally, I think that would be ideal, especially when it comes into a graduate CV, you know, because you don't have like tons of experience. And if you do, try to condense it as much as you can in there, because at the end of the day, okay, some tasks or some responsibilities are super nice. But if you don't, my advice is just to, for example, because this is going to give you the PDF version, just convert it into Word, make another page, and continue from where you've ended. Now, that is going to take a bit more time that I've actually wanted you guys to share with, but it's a point to start. Now, of course, it's a paid version. I don't recommend it because I'm not split money everywhere, but it's a point of view, for example, understanding how it works, how the structure works around it. And to be honest, I love the tool. It's quite nice. It's quite simple, quite, I would say, it's the perfect balance between creative and structured. So I truly recommend it. Okay, docs. Let's see. Yeah, the don'ts in a CV. Try to avoid as much as you can spelling mistakes. Now, for this, I think you guys have or have heard already, or maybe you're already using Grammarly, so I truly recommend it. Now, even I have, or had better said, some spelling mistakes in my CV. What I did was I actually shared my CV with two other friends. They read my CV and they said, I think you wanted to mend this there. And it helps, you know, because at the end of the day, the excitement of the moment, or you wanted to create the perfect CV, actually kind of lets you go with the flow and you forget about it. Speaking of the interesting CV photos, so yeah, please guys don't do that, even though they're funny. I mean, for me, it's funny, but I'm a different type of recruiter. Most of the recruiters aren't like me, sadly. But yeah, just try to make one that actually represents who you are, and yeah, not try to put a photo from the party. Now, yeah, speaking of trying to create or recreate the part of the job description, say, yeah, it's the perfect match. Try not to do that, especially as most recruiters, including myself, we know the job description end to end, because most of the time we are the ones that actually write it, because the line managers don't have the time to do it, or they just base their job descriptions on it and we just recreate it. So I don't know, I truly recommend rephrasing it quite a lot. And if you don't think that, okay, I don't have necessarily the right experience for it, or this doesn't actually sound like something that I would have done or did, guys, that might not be the job for you. And I'm telling you from the bottom of my heart, because yeah, at the end of the day, if you think about it, it really has to match for you. I mean, okay, being desperate for a job doesn't actually look that good, and a recruiter actually spots it. And trust me, I've seen amazing guys and amazing girls out there that I've seen in the interviews that just want a job, and I've tried my best to actually get them the role that they would have actually want, not the one that they've applied, ironically. And yeah, speaking of interesting emails, don't get me started. I saw an email that it was just kiss me and shut up or something like that at yahoo.com. So yeah, I mean, I think we've already passed, past that part of, and our age maybe, of fancy and interesting emails. But yeah, guys, try to create your own. Numbers are fine, but don't try to like make them that obvious. Okay, so for example, I understand that, I don't know, your name is already taken. We are plenty out there, so yeah, just try to make your email as professional as possible. Okay. Good. And speaking of the second stage, and that is my favorite part, to be honest, because the recruiter is, okay, myself in this case, but is the person that actually wants for, the best for the business and the best for the candidate. And when I'm saying this is that ideally, because I know that my colleagues aren't all the same, they want to actually feed the person with the company culture. And the company culture, the perspectives of you growing inside that company and be happy, because we can all be excited in the beginning, right? I mean, the first 6 months, I think for every role is heaven. Okay, most of the roles, I take that back. Because at the end of the day, it's something new, it's something exciting, you learn something new every day, you have a lot of projects. But the recruiter's role in this case is actually seeing beyond those 6 months and seeing how can you actually progress, and eventually maybe taking a managerial role at a certain point. Okay, so what do we want to see? We want to see motivation. And even though this sounds as a cliche, trust me, I've seen people that apply for roles, and even young people, and motivation is below deck. I mean, I swear I was almost sleeping in the interview, and I was hoping that interview is going to end as soon as possible. And speaking of that, a good indicator of an interview is that if it lasts more than 40-45 minutes, it's a good one. You've kind of nailed it, or at least you've already left there with a great impression, and they have a great impression over you. Now, on the other hand, if it lasts less, well, again, it depends. But for example, if you're going through a recruitment agency, if it is less, no worries. If it is directly through a company, well, yeah, that wasn't exactly the role for you. So speaking of hints in the interview that you can actually spot if you got the job, or if you got into a second interview. Again, going back to that last idea, if they ask you about your salary expectations from the first interview, it's still a good sign. Now, I'm going to get back to the salary part later. Now, who takes the final decision? Now, that is a bit tricky, because even though the interview went great, you had the talk with the recruiter, with the manager, with everybody. At the end of the day, unfortunately or fortunately, the line manager takes the last decision. And when I'm saying this, and I would let's say explain my negative side, is that most of the time the recruiter sees beyond what the line manager sees. Most of the time. And for example, sees potential in people that say, hey, this person is absolutely amazing, just give him a chance. And they go for somebody completely different, and of course they end up living in, I don't know, 3-6 months. And yeah, you as a recruiter just have to take a deep breath, take it from zero, and yeah, reopen the role. But that is the part that you shouldn't actually be discouraged from, because at the end of the day, getting or not getting a role doesn't mean the end of the role, the end of the world. But also doesn't mean that that role would have been the perfect frame for you and for your growth. And yeah, how do we evaluate? And this I want to go quite a lot into the interview per se side. I mentioned their competency, attitude, values, and motivation. Now, this is my type of interview, and as I mentioned, I know that there are, I would say, as many recruiters that are out there, as many styles and as many types of evaluations and as many, I don't know, you name it, are. Personally, when it comes into an interview, for example, right, it depends, as I mentioned in the CV. The CV, if it is for, I don't know, quite of a, I would say not necessarily stiff, but you understand my point, environment. Because at the end of the day, for example, if you go, I don't know, for an interview to a bank, again, not relevant to the pharmacy, okay, but if you go for an interview to a bank, of course you need to dress up, right? You need to actually make an impression. Now, if you go for, I don't know, a creative agency, just be creative, be yourself, okay, not going in, I don't know, trousers and like you're going out of the gym. But yeah, just, you know, have something in there. I would say the perfect balance with it is a slight bit of being yourself while keep it professional. So, okay, just for example, okay, us girls in summer, we have it at our best. We just put a nice dress on that doesn't like have too much of a cleavage, and we're good and we're quite elegant. Now the guys, I know that it's tough with the suits, so sorry about that, but it's the tough part of life, I guess. But okay, we can always go for the Steve Jobs kind of, I would say, style, so that is also accepted. Now, when it comes to the pharmaceutical world, how do you behave in an interview? It all comes down to the motivation, and as I mentioned, to the where do you actually get your energy from and what are your core values. And when I'm saying this is that imagine you're going to have in front another human being that already knows the team, already knows the culture of the company, already knows the priorities of the company and where do they want to go in the next, let's say, 2 to 3 years, right? So the business strategy. Now, the recruiter itself, in theory again, but hopefully, is the person that actually should bring that person in that would grow and let another person grow by actually, like, okay, just making one role switch to another, right? So imagine like this. You're going to go into a company as an intern, right? With the purpose of eventually growing. So as we all know, and that isn't a secret, the moment you grow to a new role, that role becomes either vacant because of, it becomes vacant for different reasons. So either that person moves to a new role, so it gets promoted, or I don't know, picks up a new branch of the business, whatever, or okay, that person leaves, which is part of the, I would say, the normal curve in terms of recruitment as well, and I would say professional life. So yeah, just think about it that, okay, when I'm going to enter into a company, in whatever role, I need to actually see the possibilities that exist in my team. How I like to do it, and I think that is the part where what are the things you should do before you apply. Just use all the social media to your advantage. Now, don't go on Facebook or Snapchat again, yeah? So we go on LinkedIn, guys. And most of the people that you are going to be their teammates, so to say, they're already for sure on LinkedIn. So let's put a nicely 80-90%, hopefully. And you can actually see who your manager might be, see who your teammates are. And regarding this, I'm going to share with you at the end of this presentation quite a nice tool that you can actually spot their personalities and your own. And you can see, okay, so this is how I can approach this person, this is how I should act, or how I should, I don't know, maybe write an email, or how should I start or end an email. But the idea itself is just, how to put it, just think about, for example, if you are in a team of 3 people, and you are the 4th, and say, okay, out of these 3 people, where would I want to go further? Because I can go to option 1, 2, or 3. So in that moment, even when you're not even starting your role, or even when you started your role already, you already know what part of those roles you're going to be replacing. Now, the recruiter thinks ahead. So the recruiter thinks, okay, when I'm bringing this person in, I'm going to give her most probably this role in 1 year, 2 years time, this role, maybe never, because that person is already going to be there. Or maybe this role that I wanted to grow to, towards the business acumen that we have and towards the business strategy that we have. So that is, let's say, the back side of it. In terms of the interview, I know that we are all nervous. I'm always nervous in my interviews, even though, it's kind of weird me going to interviews knowing all of this, but it's fun. Because we end up having conversations. At the end of the day, I don't believe, and to be honest, I ran away from the typical interviews. And where do you see yourself in the next 5 years? And what is your shoe size? Guys, all these interviews are nice, and they are nicely done, and they are put a lot of effort into it, especially with all the questions that they have. Because the questions that they have, they are quite a useful tool in terms of determining and being being quite objective to all the candidates that they are seeing. Because at the end of the day, as I mentioned, one can have more energy, more enthusiasm, a lot more motivation, but lack the skills. So it's a matter of compromising. Now, doing that, be clever. Have a read into the job description before you're actually going, and see in the job descriptions what boxes do you tick and what boxes do you don't, and focus on the ones that you don't. And when I'm saying that, it's like this. Think about it. I don't know, maybe just giving you a silly example, you're not good with Excel, right? You don't do, I don't know, programming in Excel. And try to bring it up in the conversation, because that is your opportunity to learn. It's your opportunity to grow. You are fully aware of it. You are acting like an adult and like a fully responsible person of his professional growth. And you actually know, okay guys, so this is happening. If I'm going to start here tomorrow, I will need a lot of guidance around, I don't know, Excel in this case, right? I would need somebody to help me, understand better pivot tables, or how things are done, or VLOOKUPs, or whatever. You just Google a bit. And yeah, speaking of the discussion that we had in our last discussion, think about, okay, that part of just Google, it actually works. People are actually going into Google to see a lot of stuff. Even recruiters, even though they don't admit it. Word of advice. Just for you to not, if you're not a person that moves your hand, or, I don't know, gesticulate quite a lot, have always something in your hand to hold on to. So for me, I always have a pen that I utterly adore, and I always have it in my hand no matter what. And even if I don't, I just cross my hand and wait patiently to see what is happening, showing that I'm open to anything. Now, just for your hands to not be shaking or anything. Speaking of the public speaking tools that I think my colleagues already kind of shared with you, or if not, they will share with you in the future for sure in all the amazing trainings that they have. Now, speaking of the tremor in your voice, take deep breaths and think about, let's say, your phrase before you actually say it. Just try to speak slow. Let your heart be at the same pace as your breath is. And in that moment, things are just going to flow. Now, speaking of which, the recruiter's job is for you to be also comfortable in the interview. And this is what I am trying to do. My interviews are pure conversations. But yeah, I still saw some people that are tough. So I still try to break that chain for them. And don't let a bad interview disappoint you. As I mentioned, there aren't all perfect. We are all humans, and I know that maybe even I didn't make a person comfortable in the interview or whatever, and I didn't realize it. So just accept it, like, okay, it's still it's an experience. At the end of the day, something that you've ticked the box that, okay, I had this bad experience and now I know what I shouldn't do in the next one, or things that I should spot before actually accepting or not the role. Because at the end of the day, the interview is a two-way, right? So you're not the one evaluated, you also evaluate the person that is in front of you. Because at the end of the day, the recruiter is the first person that you're going to see in the company. So just have that as a thought. Now, regarding the speech itself, I would say just go with the flow. Just focus on some things, as I mentioned, the things that you don't know, the things that motivate you, the things that bring you energy. Bring that energy in the interview, and yeah, just, I would say, impress them, but by being yourself. You know, like they can go out of that meeting with, that was an amazing meeting. Now I don't have any more energy to do anymore, but that was an amazing meeting. And trust me, for most of the recruiters, that can make their day, and that can make yours as well. Because at the end of the day, it's nice to get out of a meeting with a smile on your face, right? And I'm going to, because I mentioned about the salary part, most of the interviews exit with that famous, and what would be your salary expectations kind of question. And word of advice, don't be scared of it. Now, I know that in the beginning you might not have that many expenses, which is utterly amazing, and I truly miss it. But at the end of the day, we all want some salary that, you know, would motivate us by the end of the month. So guys, just do a bit of Google research, see a bit of what would be a salary average that would make that role, okay, let's say it would make sense for that role. I don't know, and just try to go around that. Now, I know that, I mean, me as a recruiter, I have my own technique, so to say, around taking that salary expectations out of a person. But at the end of the day, if you think about it, you will have our expenses, right? So we need to pay our bills, we need to pay our rent, we need to enjoy life, we need to travel. Okay, not now, but when this is going to end, we all want to travel. So it isn't something that people would, should just run away from. And yeah, okay, if you know that, you might have friends in there that already know their, some salaries or some salary brackets. Count on them as well. Just go a bit below what they actually mentioned. So when I'm saying this, is like this: think about it as a business strategy. If I have a salary bracket from, let's say, giving you an example, between 500 euros and 1000 euros net per month that I can give to that person, if I would give that person 1000 from the very beginning, in the moment that I would have the annual review at the end of the day, or at the end of the year, sorry, I cannot give him more, even though that person performed amazingly. So if you go between, let's say, 500 and 1000, and I ask, okay, can you please give me 800? I would say, okay, so it's quite compliant. I can grow this person. I can give him more. I can give him something that would motivate her at the end of the day. So just have that in mind when it all comes back to it. Yeah, and speaking of the how we evaluate and how do we evaluate ourselves and the person that we have in front. The values, in my opinion, are quite important. And for example, for me, family isn't a value, and I know that it's a strong value for a lot of people out there. And that is reflected a lot in my way of being, my, let's say, grow as a person, my professional growth as well. So it's quite important to set your values. Now, this is the link, and I don't know if you can see it in there, because I cannot, but if Ciprian is going to share with you this presentation, which I truly recommend, you're going to see it, and I truly recommend it for you to see a bit on how, what type of values can you think, Chip? Can you actually spot on, right? So for example, I don't know, for me, for sure, it's, one of them is the truth. So, or being fair, better said. So if I see that something isn't fair in the company, in the team, well, that is a big trigger for me. And even though I didn't realize it until years later, it was the moment that I started looking for a new job. Because that was the moment when, okay, this isn't fair for me and things aren't changing. So I really want a company that reflects this and reflects that in my day-to-day work. So have a look into those. I truly recommend it. It's quite fun. So you would actually go through it quite fast. And you can actually base your story and your interview also on your values, and give examples on why and where do those values actually came from and why is it important for you. Okie dokes. Yeah, and why you put this? back when I had, I think in my 11th grade in high school, so quite a long time ago, I had my language teacher that actually made us a very, very nice question. And it was, in nowadays, I would say social media environment, everybody can tell who you are by a search on Google. So the question that she answered was, if I search your name, what does come up? And that actually kind of stuck with me throughout the years. And now I realize that it's called personal branding. And yeah, even though they might find, I don't know, your Instagram profile or your Facebook profile, it's just something that it reflects on who you are, how you are as a person. And just to give you an example, for example, I still have a blog from a lot of years ago, but it's part of my growth. So I'm quite proud of it. So no matter, what people they actually search for me on Google and they see that, I'm still okay with it, so I'm fine. But then again, I realized, for example, a couple of days ago that I found some photos with my ex-boyfriend, so that I just try to remove. So yeah, just try to see, guys, what does it appear when you write your name. If it's something that doesn't reflect to you at all, or it doesn't appear your photo, or maybe it appears, just have just a quick look. People are doing that quite a lot, especially in HR. Even though might not be the recruiter, might be the line manager, might be the colleague of the recruiter. So yeah, just word of advice. Now, the tough part, the motivation letter. Now, I have to be honest with you guys, most of us don't read the motivation letter, and I would actually put something even more honest in there. Don't read boring motivation letters or long motivation letters. Guys, we want to actually see something that would reflect who you are, quite brief, because all the rest I can see in your CV. So, for example, if you tell me, yeah, okay, I've been earning this experience, I've done this, and that, okay, I've already seen it in your CV. I want something else. I want a story. I want something that shows me who you are and shows me something about yourself that I wouldn't see in that CV. As I mentioned, for example, I'm that type of person that at least I would give a call, and I would want to see the vibe, I would want to hear the voice, see the energy, understand the person, understand the human behind that CV and behind that phone call. But most of them, they don't. So if it is that part of the motivation letter, try to be as yourself as you can. And I put those for personality types because it helps quite a lot in determining, for example, even you who you are, right? So you can actually see, okay, so maybe I identify myself in being, for example, influencer, right? And I know that I enjoy the spotlight. So maybe I can actually tell a story, or maybe, make a brief comment over why I like it, why it seems like something that, I don't know, it might be beneficial for the team that I'm joining. And in this case, for example, if I put the influencer and enjoys the spotlight, I put that I would actually cheer up the team when it has a down moment, or I wouldn't actually allow awkward silences in a team meeting. For example, I don't know, you would just come up with a new idea, you would brainstorm a lot, so that would imply quite a lot of, let's say, interest and potential to grow in the team. Yeah, and I mentioned that to speak about your dreams and your purpose, and okay, what would be something that I know would be different, as I mentioned, from the other ones. Because let's face it, anyone when they write a motivation letter, we all have our own motivations. Some of them that they want to say even the darker motivations, like, okay, I want to have an amazing salary. We all want to have an amazing salary. But we all also want to be happy, or to have, I don't know, an amazing job, or, okay, in higher roles, right, to be a manager to I don't know how many people, and I don't know, to just guide them. That would be the nice part, right? And yeah, I would say that, that part of be honest and true to yourself in the moment of choice is the moment that while writing the motivation letter, truly recommend it in the beginning, just write a lot of thoughts that you have. Because at the end of the day, you can, from, for example, I don't know, a two pages motivation letter, you can always cut, and modify and adjust as much as you want. But try first writing as many reasons as you would why you would want that job. And if there aren't that many, again, that might not be the role for you, or that might not be the company for you. Now, speaking of doing a bit of research about the company, most of the companies, they have on their websites their values, or maybe they have it on Facebook or wherever. They have some values written somewhere. And okay, you can try to actually go around those values and make it your own. So for example, I don't know, if one of their values is collaboration, just write something about collaboration in the motivation letter. Write something that would actually make a aha or a out of that motivation letter, rather than here's another one. Because at the end of the day, we want to be excited also from the applications that we receive. And we want to see the real people and the real person that is out there. Because, okay, for example, I'm quite of a monkey and I am the influential side. But I understood that I really need to be a bit stable and a bit compliant to my work, and to have a bit of, let's say, different approach when it comes down to other people. So I just want to, okay, in the beginning, just be as honest as I can with myself, and as the conversation goes, I adapt into seeing what they are saying. So again, giving you an example, when I wrote my motivation letter, I'm bad at writing motivation letters. So I just wrote one in my entire life, and it was one that I actually had my best friend helping me with. And I actually asked her for advice because I really didn't know what to write and how to write it. And we just created a story. And of course, years later, I adapted it, and now I'm okay with it. But just start somewhere, and you might not need it today, you might not need it tomorrow, because most of the applications don't require necessarily a motivation letter, but just have it there, because it might be a motivation letter for yourself later on the years. And yeah, speaking of structuring, so I mentioned in the CV, and try not to put it also in the motivation letter, don't try to create large paragraphs, because guys, people are getting bored into writing stories. And even myself, I mean, imagine that long paragraph, the body that I have to read. I just want to see a lot of space. I want to see keywords. I want to see short phrases that would make a lot of sense. And yeah, just try to actually, I mean, this is how I created mine, and this is how I realized that I've created mine. So I just mentioned who I am. And speaking, of my story with, okay, I'm a pharmacist that went into HR, what you love and why. Because at the end of the day, I want to see me as a recruiter. Why do you love this? I mean, you're not the only one. So what actually differentiates you from all the 300 rest? What did this role spark your interest? So speaking of the aha moment, just think about the moment that you've read and you've seen the job description and said, okay, let's apply. Why do you say that you wanted to apply? Why did you say, okay, let's see how this goes? State the fact or tell a story. This is a tricky one, because again, it depends a lot on the person that's reading the motivation letter. In the moment of choice between these two, I would always go for the let's say the version that complies more with the company. So if you know that the company that you are applying to, I don't know, they just want a lot of facts, or they are more open, they are bubbly, they want to actually see the person, they have this culture of fun, go and tell a story. If they aren't like that, just state the facts, be quite brief into what you're saying, and yeah, just try to spread some sparkles of joy around it. And make about the future you, because as I mentioned, I want to see, now joke aside, where you are going to be in the 5 years. Well, to be honest, the 5 years question should be an easy one, and it should be an easy one, not because, okay, I want to be a manager, I want to be I don't know who. It isn't about the title, it's about what you want to learn, how do you want to be, When in 5 years you're going to meet your best friend, ask yourself, what do I want to tell that person? So, for example, for me is my future me, I want to be a specialist and I want to feel like I make a difference. So for me, that would be my future me. And I would put it in that motivation letter, no matter what. And if that person says, okay, maybe this person isn't for me, I'm perfectly fine with it, because maybe that isn't the company for me as well. And the call to action, I think we all know about it, so it's mostly about, hey guys, don't forget to actually call me. I'm here, just pick the phone and let's have a chat. Now, how do you end it? There are a lot of ways out there, from, I don't know, kind regards, best regards, looking forward to receiving your reply. There are tons of it. As I mentioned, it depends a lot on how is the company. Most of them are, I mean, for me, because I'm quite of an open person and I'm quite human in what I'm doing, I always end it like, let's just have a quick chat and we can take it from there. Kind of attitude, and trying to write it in a way that actually is business-like. But for most of people, a simple, I don't know, kind regards, best regards, or looking forward to receiving your reply would do. So don't eat your mind around it. Yeah, and speaking of the difference, so guys, as I mentioned, I wouldn't read a motivation letter like I've seen in the left, but I would read the one on the right, even though maybe the content is the same. But at least it gives me some air to actually breathe in between the lines and, you know, just have some idea over how it is in there. Now, speaking of the great news, I mentioned earlier about the link for the CV, for the enhancedcv.com. Now, this is another one that I found. It's called Novo Resume. It also has resumes, templates, and cover letters. It gets you a point to start, to be again honest with you. Because at least it gives, okay, I can start somewhere, I have a template, I just can fill it, I can adapt it afterwards when I'm feeling more creative, where I'm feeling more inspired. But at least it's something that you can actually go into and, you know, like, just play around. To be again fully honest, honesty, it is the same procedure, so to say, like it was previously, because it only gives you one page. But for the cover letter, please guys, don't write more than one page. No matter what. And yeah, for the resume, it is the same as I mentioned, but just play around and see where it takes you. Yeah, and I think the tricky question, who wins the role? Well, the interview actually makes a difference in this case. Because me as a recruiter, I actually want to see if that person would stand a chance in a wave of change. And this is why I put this question of the one that adapts more or the one that has the right skills. Now, when I first started as a recruiter, better said in my first internship, in my internship, I had one of my colleagues that we were talking about her daughter, and she said something that again kind of stuck with me. And she said like this: I'm not going to teach my daughter to be something specific, and I'm not going to teach her to be a role. I'm going to teach her skills that would prepare her for future roles. And that is quite important. Why I'm saying that? Think about my role as an HR. 20 years ago, HR was only about payroll, contracts, and salary. And I think payroll kind of covers the salary already. And now HR is a lot more, from recruitment to training to, I don't know, performance, whatever. We have a lot of things. So imagine 20 years ago, you would have prepared an HR person to know how to do documents and to be quite, let's say, attentive to details when it comes down, of course, to the salary, maybe know a bit of accounting, you know, so know your numbers. And now that isn't that relevant because HR people are much more. So when it comes down to actually, okay, I'm going to be this role. Don't be a role. Be you. Be something that you want to be in those, as I mentioned, those 5 years, right? So I mentioned there digital, cultural, and emotional intelligence. There are some debates now, especially in nowadays situation, and I'm going to mention it, I think, in the next slide. How 2020 is actually going to look like in terms of skills. And the most of them that actually appeared are the ones that, this ones around digital, cultural, and emotional intelligence. Emotional intelligence is a topic that I think everybody heard of it throughout the years. It becomes a cliche right now, but it's something quite important. And it's a matter of, I would say, communication and knowing how to interact with the people around you. And I would say that, it's that difference between being smart and being intelligent. Now, of course, you still need to be intelligent, but being smart helps a lot. The digital part is I would say all the tools that we are using nowadays. Imagine, digital intelligence is exactly us using Adobe Connect right now. And I don't know, in 1 year time, and what am I saying, by the end of this year, for sure there are going to be a lot more tools that can help us ease, so to say, some of the tasks that we are doing currently, even at the office or in our day-to-day jobs or even our day-to-day lives. And me giving you an example, a couple of days ago, I found on Google Apps, I found a tool that I can actually transform my speech into a script, because I was constantly postponing a report and said, oh, I can just do it. I can just do this by a simple meeting. And a friend of mine said, I think you can actually find this tool on Google. I said, okay, that is actually not a bad idea. And I actually finished my report in less than half an hour. So yeah, speaking of being digital, that can be translated in a lot of ways. So from the tools that you are using, from all the data that is now out there, and I've actually seen some numbers, and I don't know much about IT, but they mentioned something like 9 zetatons or something like that. So there's a lot of data out there, and we just need to actually interpret it quite a lot. And I think us as pharmacists, and especially when it comes into working in a pharmacy company, I think that is something that we should be quite skilled at. And the cultural intelligence, I would translate it into being open. Being open quite a lot into any culture that is out there. All the cultures that we are going to, let's say, encounter are different. Thank God for that. And we all have something to learn from each of them, to be honest. Me moving to Malta meant a lot. I've never seen such a cultural concentration in one island in my life, and I think that actually transformed the idea of cultural intelligence for me. So guys, have a look into this and see what of these three actually fits you best, and try to dedicate some time for to actually deep dive into it. Now, speaking of our situations, because yeah, stepping out of the myth and of the interviews, let's talk about our COVID situation. Yeah, what happened is that it was, I would say, last year. It was the talk of, oh, okay, we're going into recession, guys. We are already part of it. And I just dropped some ideas over, let's say, the realities that are happening right now, 2020. Now, my word of advice would be to for you to actually do some research in your own country. Just giving you an example, the sector's review is, I would say, Europe based. So for example, in Romania, one of the sectors that is blooming in 2020 is agriculture, but for example, might not be for I don't know what other country. So just be quite specific on what you're looking. Now, unemployment rate, even though it's growing, don't let it scare you. I would say it's mostly the paranoia around it, because people are still getting we're still getting employed. The rate is lower than 2008. so we can breathe gently around it. As Chip mentioned there, yeah, there's a lot of boost when it comes down to remote work or work from home strategies. HR is working day and night around convincing the CEOs that that is the future. The discussions were there quite a long time ago, but yeah, I think we just needed a situation like this to accelerate the implementation. I wanted to mention Gen Z at work and Gen Y, the future managers, because you might be in any of them, to be honest, right now. And I would say, guys, be patient with the Gen Ys, such as myself, because nobody taught us how to be managers. We just have our own way of being that we try to implement at work. And Gen Z, guys, just bring as much, I would say, digital ideas and vibes and challenges to actually help us grow as well. So Gen Z at Work is actually a book. If you want to read it, I truly recommend it. It's quite fun to read. I laughed a lot. So yeah, just that would be, let's say, a word of advice. Growing into an informal environment. Now, kind of that connects with the remote work or work from home, because we're all kind of stay in our pajamas. But now, joke aside, it's mostly about now, is that difference between, guys, now we are working and now we are joking. So just, like, create an environment where everybody is free to talk, have this feedback culture that is growing in the last years. That is quite good for it as well. And yeah, just be honest again with yourself in terms of the role that you're applying, the managers that you're seeing, the recruiter that you're seeing, because at the end of the day, even though the job is amazing, the company might not be. And I don't want for any of you a job that you will feel miserable in 6 months or in 1 year from now. And I wanted to mention the customer-led market, because that is quite important for you to understand what type of roles or what type of companies we want to be a part of. Now, when I'm mentioning that, is imagine, for example, the pharmaceutical industry is always going to be there. So that is something that I think it's kind of renowned by now and everybody knows it. So we are kind of relaxed around it. Only that what happens right now, even though it isn't fair for HR or for future employees, is the fact of most of the roles are going to be merged into, for example, if you have a team of 5, it's going to be a team of 3 with more responsibilities. Now, the upside of that is that those 3 people would learn more. So, okay, you grow that person. The downside is that you are not going to need that many, let's say, new people that don't have that much skill or knowledge into it. Now, internships are still going to bloom. And it's a fact. Everybody wants to have the experience. Everybody wants to go for it. And even the companies want to do that. So again, guys, just take an ease on that. But yeah, I would say that the most important part when it comes to how to apply and basically how to create your perfect job application in times of recession is don't give up. And be more and hustle as much as you can, even though I know, again, this hustle word is quite a cliche right now. Hustle meaning just, for example, if you're applying to a job, right? Put it that, I don't know, let me think about it. Pharmacovigilance assistant, put it like that. I just invented that right now. And you already, I don't know, maybe applied through, I don't know, the local job board, or maybe through LinkedIn. Now, the good part about it, as I mentioned earlier, you can actually go on LinkedIn and search your team, right? So search your manager, search maybe the person that used to have your role in the past, because that might also happen. And for example, you can actually search and see if that person grew within the company or just moved to another company. What I did lately and kind of worked was actually calling that person and reach out to her on LinkedIn and said, hey, do you have 10 minutes? I have an interview soon, even though, for example, I had an offer. I have an interview soon with them, and I wanted to ask you, how do you feel about it? Just a feedback about the company. And the response rate was amazing. People are willing to share. People are willing to actually share their experience and see, I don't know, that their voice is heard. And word of advice, guys are way more approachable. And girls are, okay, what does this person want from me? But it's still going to give you a reply. So I have both feedback. So for example, I had feedback like, okay, this manager was amazing and I've learned a lot from. And the reason that I left didn't have anything to do with with the company or the role. I just had a personal issue. Or I actually found the person that said, look, the role is amazing, they pay quite low, but yeah, that wasn't just the right moment for me. And for example, I said, okay, the payment for me is okay, so that is something that I can just discard. So yeah, I think that just making a difference in terms of connecting with them, drop them a line. For example, you've already applied on a job board. Yeah, like 300 more. So just connect with them on LinkedIn, drop them a line and said, hey, I saw that you have this opening and I'm quite interested in actually, I know, applying to it, or have a 10-minute chat if you're also interested. Here's my CV and I'm looking forward to receiving your reply or your thoughts around it. Now, just to be a bit more spam, I think you can actually
Hi guys, this is Stefan here, Educational Affairs Coordinator. We're currently facing technical difficulties and we will be back with you soon. Just a bit of patience.
Okay, so everybody can hear me now? Yippee, great. So I think we can actually make this night happen, right? Guys, where did it stop? Okay, good. So on LinkedIn, I mentioned, okay, talking to them on LinkedIn, or maybe drop them a message, even though it's the same one, on their personal email. Now I know that, see, for example, once you connect, they also have, for example, their phone number, so don't go into the phone number. The emails are not are decently and fine, and even the chat on LinkedIn is okay. But I'm mentioning this because, as I mentioned, it's just a differentiator. It's something that said, okay, this person did I made an extra mile, did an effort, to actually approach me. It's she or he is quite interested in this role compared to the other ones that, okay, they might be as well, but that person is quite interested in it. So for me, it's a yes, definitely. Okay, so speaking of some rays of sunshine, Chip mentioned in the beginning that I'm working with egg recruitment, so I've actually helped into writing this blog, things that you should know before applying for a job. Now, just to give you some details about it, I mentioned some of them in the beginning about reading the job description and the job title of the role that you apply for. Search for the of the role that you apply for. Search for the salary and see how it is out there. And I saw your questions. I'm going to reply to them soon. Research about the company, the culture, the values, everything that's related to it. And okay, going back to LinkedIn, don't be afraid to reach out and go out there and see how everything goes. Um, and yeah, I would say that apply for the jobs that you really want and the jobs that match your background, because as I mentioned, I mean, and guys, this might sound insane, but I've received For example, finance people applying for marketing roles, or finance people applying for sales roles, or whatever. So apply at least for something that is actually your job. And if it doesn't, speaking of that extra mile, go on LinkedIn and explain to that person why you from pharma you want to go to, I don't know, accounting. You know, just do that extra mile if it is that much of a difference between it. Have an updated CV and double check it with your friends. In terms of, for example, have the right date, the right I don't know, years, whatever. It can happen. We are humans, we do mistakes, we are all accepting that. So yeah, just have that double checking. And speaking of the structured, and yeah, just look and use LinkedIn to your advantage, I would say. And I would want to actually write in here, but I'm also going to mention it. It's called Crystal Nose. Guys, you can actually Google that. It's a Google extension that you can find it for LinkedIn. You have 10 profiles that you can, okay, I would say investigate, analyze. I use it a lot. It's quite fun. You can actually subscribe to it with your Gmail address, because they kind of seen it as a work whatever related the address, and you can actually try it first on yourself, see yourself how accurate it is or not. I was surprised how accurate it is for mine. Try it with a friend to see again how accurate is it, and save those 8 more for the role that you actually want, and the role that you want to go that extra mile for, in order to see how the manager is, how are the people in your team, and yeah, if it is a person that you can actually interact with or not. Just try it. It's fun, promise. Now, I wanted to also share with you that book. It's called A Job to Love. I've just received it I think a week ago. And I've actually seen it first online. There were some exercises in it. I'm going to search for it. I actually asked a colleague, because she gave me the link, for me to share you the other exercises that are in there. To be honest, it's like the book is like €5 on Amazon, so I truly recommend it. It's quite fun. And look, I actually have 2 questions and 2 challenges for you into recognizing the job that you actually love, or better said, if the job that you are actually in right now is the right job for you. And as I mentioned earlier, when it comes into, okay, the values, remember the chart, how it goes down to knowing who you are and knowing the people that you're interacting with. This is the first challenge. So think about 3 people that you most envy, okay? So the people that say, oh, I want to be that person, right? And write down, why do you actually, in that case it was a why. Why do you actually envy them, right? So I don't know, just giving you silly examples right now. I envy them because I know they spend a lot of time traveling and they make a lot of money out of it, or they get to design a lot of things, or whatever, you know. Just think about those 3 people and write down this little 3 stuff. Now, the challenge isn't for you to do it right now. I mean, you can do it, it's fine for me, but as Chip is going to share with you the presentation later, you can actually take it, you know, like home, and as a food for thought kind of idea. Just as a hint, most of the people that you're going to see that, well, these 3 people that you most envy, but guys, really the people that you most envy, you're going to see that they have something in common. So better said, that those things that they have in common are the things that you are looking to and towards in a job that you want to actually have day to day. So take that as a, let's say, idea. And the second one, it's about what makes you, I would say, jump and wake you. Yeah, okay, what makes you wake up? Because I want you to think about absolutely all the things that you've always wanted to do, from your very childhood until now. And I want you to think not about the things itself or the action itself or what does it actually, like the end result. I want you to think about what started and what made you have that, like desire, or made you said, okay, I want to do this and I'm going to do it, and you did it. But going 3 steps back, what made you want to do it in the first place? So have these two challenges as a food for thought, because for me they said a lot, and I think that they are going to mean a lot for you as well. Just, I don't know, just have, to be honest, both of them are like, I don't know, 15 minutes. Of course, you can take them more. It depends a lot of who you are and what type of kind of time do you want to go into them. But have these two as an idea. And yeah, I'm going to, as I mentioned, as soon as I find that link, I'm going to share with you the link as well regarding the other. It's called the exercise of pleasures, and it's mostly about the pleasure. For example, if you have pleasure for money, technology, helping others, leadership, empathy. So yeah, just I've seen that as an idea, but I'm going to share with you the link as soon as I have it. And yeah, the magical moment. I think I talked a lot. So guys, here is the moment for you to talk. So I don't know, spread your questions. I've seen a couple up there. So I think Stefan or Chip, if you can help me with the ones that I missed when people were starting asking, and you said, okay, just wait for the Q&A, would be amazing.
Yes, but first, thank you very much for your interesting and insightful presentation. I believe 1 hour and a half of valuable knowledge transfer in regards to this topic is like super important for people to better assess how to do very good, let's say, job application. And yeah, from this moment, I'll open the floor for the Q&A session. So I have